getting a little workout in.
And you can't tell me that he has to work real hard to grab a rebound because his head hits the freaking rim.
Hmm.
So what's his
We
vert? Like -0.2?
we are back with another episode here of the Big Break podcast covering your Big Ten sports. We have all four of us here today. Finally, Ethan was away on his travels. Ethan, how was your travels away the past couple weekends? Your car trip, and then you went to South Carolina last weekend. How were your trips?
Car trip, fantastic. 1,300 miles in 4 days in the car. A couple hiccups like always. Got to hit up our favorite spots and enjoy the scenery and the roads. Got to ream my car. That was a good time. And then Charleston had less better weather than Mansfield did. Ohio was about 5 to 10 degrees warmer and sunny. We had a tropical depression going through, so I was walking around in the wind and rain for 2, 3 days.
uh, Sorry
It
to
was a
hear
great
that.
time. It was a great time. I'm not taking anything away from the time, but it was a little adverse weather.
Alrighty. And then Drew, we weren't expecting you here this morning, but you made it back. You were at the College World Series yesterday in Terre Haute, a little old stomping ground of mine, if you will, home of Larry Bird and the Sycamores. How was that Indiana State campus? It's great. I've been there a few times myself. My mom went there, graduated with Larry Bird, by the way. Just want to throw that out there. But Drew, how was that?
It was beautiful. The campus itself, we walked right through it because we walked from the hotel to the stadium, and campus was beautiful, real old school. Um, the baseball stadium was beautiful. It was like a brick exterior, real nice. We stopped by the football stadium on the way out, which is like almost 10 miles from campus
Yeah.
and like not in a great area. Uh, it reminded me of Arlen Field in
Okay.
Mansfield, old school concrete. It only had one side of fans, but it was fun.
Pretty typical. Pretty
Yeah,
typical though for small universities like that though
yeah.
to have one side.
And so the games we saw were North Carolina beat Wright State 5-0 for in the first game, and so Wright State is eliminated.
Ooh.
North Carolina plays today. They play the loser of last night's game, which was Iowa.
Okay.
Iowa was up, what was it, 4-2 in the eighth, and gave up a 5 spot to the Indiana State Sycamores.
Oh,
Crowd was losing their shit. It was awesome. But Iowa is just gonna Iowa. It's just like football. It's just like basketball. Iowa always blows it. So
Like
they
it.
play North Carolina today. The loser of that game goes
Awesome.
home. So
And did you enjoy your first experience at the College World Series?
yeah, it was fun.
It's great.
Yeah, the parents, obviously, baseball parents are a little different. They get loud, and so
You're
it
yeah.
was
real loud.
exciting, dude. Yeah, and just we like there's not that many people that go there. So we just got general admission tickets and stood along the fence next to the bullpen the whole game, which was pretty cool just seeing the
Do a
guys
little
warm up.
heckling.
Maybe.
Tell them get the righty out.
I was trying to pump up Iowa, man, but just wouldn't happen.
Did
Didn't
you
want it. Gotta want it, man.
gotta
Didn't
want
want
it?
it. And
Was he
they
pitching to
had
Beck or Parkman?
it was Parkman, dude.
Ah,
He was doing his little shimmy. Just driving the women crazy.
Oh,
here in Cleveland, it makes the women wanna puke.
Fair.
So I'm glad you guys had a good time on your little travels. Um, we are going to be breaking down Rutgers today and Maryland for everybody, their 2023 outlook. We've kind of broken down positions here for all four of us just to make it a little easier on all of us. Trying to gather some information. Um, let's start with the boys in the middle. Let's start with the offensive line. Arguably, probably, guys, we could probably most agree one of the most important units on the field is your offensive line, right? So Corey, let's start here with you with the offensive line guys from Rutgers. What do you have for us?
Well, they weren't very good last year, so they can't get much worse than they were last year. So we'll hopefully they'll be better. They returned three starters from last year: Hollis, Pierce, Ireland Brown, and Curtis Dunlap. They all returned. More experience after an awful season for Rutgers last year, so um, they will return. They do have to replace Willie Tyler and J.D. Dorenzo.
Okay.
Tyler left via the transfer portal, which was a big loss for them. Obviously, when you can return four of your five starters on the offensive line, you're obviously ahead of the game in most
Right.
of the places. So losing him to the transfer portal, and Dorenzo graduated and did not get drafted.
Hmm.
Um, so a few other players to kind of watch out for that I kind of have here. I have Jacob Allen, Brian Felter, and Mike Ciafini are the few to look out for. And also Nick Oliveira and John Stone, who were both high touted prospects out of high school, are in for their sophomores. Look for them to maybe break through. And to me, the biggest thing when I'm looking for the offensive line, as their offensive line was not very good last year, they did hire a new offensive line coach in Pat Flaherty. And so he was hopefully will bring some consistency to the line.
Definitely. I was trying to find it here and I wasn't able to find oh, here it was. So they gave up a total of, it looks like, 26 sacks last year on the Rutgers offensive line. They definitely need to get that down, don't you think, Core? If they want
Yeah.
to be successful this year.
Yeah, and I mean, as we've talked about previous shows, it's all about kind of the talent that you bring in too. So I look for Nick Oliveira and John Stone, who were those three, 4-star prospects that they were able to keep. They are looked to kind of break in the starting lineup and hopefully add like more athleticism. Because obviously,
Definitely.
granted, in the Big Ten, you're facing, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State.
Well,
You're
they're in
yeah,
our division. I mean, they're
right.
you know
You're gonna struggle. You're gonna struggle a little bit, of course, but they do return those three starters, and I think that that's gonna help make a big difference.
absolutely, absolutely. I'm gonna go here to the second most important position on the football field, and that's your quarterbacks, right? Um, man, when I was looking at Rutgers, it is a quarterback battle going into this year. Okay, they've obviously lost their starter and Evan Simon. He's gone. You don't have, I mean, their backup Gavin Wimsat. He was only 20 yards behind Evan at last year, but had significantly less completions and a little more attempts. So I'm not sure the effectiveness on the passer. He threw 5 touchdowns first with 7 interceptions, and he was sacked 14 times. His sack yard loss was 104, and he only had a 90 rating as a QB. It's looking bleak if you're Greg Schiano in your quarterback room. Honestly, you don't have a lot to work with. I was looking at it. I was trying to even find some highlight film on these guys, and it didn't look very good. Um, it I, I don't even know what to say other than Schiano needs to pick a guy and give him the reins and let him roll, and just try to give this one of these guys confidence that you are the best option for our team. We are sticking with you no matter what. I'm not looking at another guy right now. You are him, right? Because you're gonna have to build one of these guys up. This, I mean, Gavin Winsmith, he's probably gonna be your starter. Evan Sideman's coming back, but from the way it looked and from what I gathered from the spring game, Gavin Rupp was really the second quarterback getting a lot more snaps. And then you have the freshman, Johnny Shepard out of the Bronx, who's when I saw a clip of what I was able to find of him, this guy's a athlete, just your typical athlete who can pretty much do, he's your Swiss Army knife type of a guy, can pretty much do anything at a decently high level. So I I don't know where else to go. Radon Oliver, he played a little bit in the spring game and had a little. They should, what I found out, he had a little sparks, but nobody really flashed. And Greg Schiano even said he hasn't picked a starter yet. He doesn't know who that starter's gonna be. Um, so
I
that's.
mean,
Go ahead.
I mean, he's probably waiting on the NCAA to see if they'll let Vedra play for his seventh or eighth year. I don't know if he wants a little extra help, or
Well,
Mike Teal hasn't called him back
he's
yet.
well, from what I was reading about that, when I was, looking up some Rutgers information here, he's gone.
Oh yeah,
He used his 6 year of eligibility because they gave him,
3 years.
yeah, they gave him like the COVID year, and that gives you your 6 year in college. So yeah, he's actually used all of his eligibility, but God knows nowadays, you have Seth Towns just transferred out of Ohio State, and he's in his 8th year in college. So,
Just like to
you
play
know,
ball, man.
I
Doesn't
mean,
have to
this,
mean anything.
yeah, this guy just wants to collect NIL and, play some basketball. But like, so that's where we are. They did not get, um, they did not get a quarterback, or they did. A Johnny Shepard is enrolled. He was their, 3-star recruit. He was the national player position 7, and he was the 7th best player in his state, in the state of New York. Um, Other than that, they did not sign another quarterback, so he is the quarterback in 2023 in the future for Rutgers. Um, they did not get a transfer quarterback in, either through the transfer portal. So, if you want to know my honest opinion out there, Scarlet Knights, you start the freshman and you let him play the next 4 years. If he's your guy, if he's your only recruit this year, you gotta say in 4 years he better be something. That's just my opinion. Go ahead,
I
uh,
Drew.
dig it.
uh, I'm about 90% sure, but I'm pretty sure Gavin Wimsatt, the quarterback, is the highest rated recruit that Rutgers football has ever landed. He's a 4-star.
I mean, yeah, they didn't even
So
sign a 4-star in this previous class. So you're probably right.
that's so I think they're banking on this dude, on Wimsatt.
On one set, yeah, and I can, and you're not wrong. I mean, the guy's a junior though. So I
Yeah,
mean, if he's your highest recruit and he's a junior and he's only throwing 4 touchdowns for 7 interceptions, I mean, you got to also look at the
for sure.
competition he's playing against with versus against, right? But I think you almost have to move on, don't you? Like, I mean, maybe at some point during the season, you got to let the kid know, hey, we got to move on and get this kid more playing time. Um,
Depends on what he's doing for you.
oh, well, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, Ethan, let's go to the running backs.
Running
I'm
backs.
handing the ball off,
The old handoff
the old
tactic to
handoff to the running back. Let's hit the Rutgers running backs here because that's all I got on the quarterbacks. Like I said, there wasn't very much on Rutgers quarterbacks. Not much on Rutgers at all, really. It's a academic school.
I gotcha. Yeah, I got a little bit of, well, I couldn't find a whole lot actually. I dug and dug. It was a lot easier for me to find on Maryland everything than it was Rutgers. I spent a good 2 or 3 hours on this whole thing last night. Good news for Rutgers running game right off the rip. You get the worst defense against the rush in Northwestern week 1 in Piscataway. Week 2 in Piscataway, you pull the Temple Owls, ranked 112 out of 131 against the rush last year. So You get 2 smooth weeks to start before you hit the Hokies, nationally ranked 43 against the run, and then you travel to Ann Arbor to hit the worst time you're going to have in Michigan. Um, they
Lose
are a
by
little
50.
and not even get 50 yards of offense probably.
No.
They are
Yeah.
running in decently seasoned class. They've returning a senior in Aaron Young, Kyle Manangai seems to be their leading rusher, returning from last year. He's a junior. Samuel Brown, the fifth, second leading rusher, also returns, and Al Shaidi Salam is a junior. They also brought in a three-star Jay Sean Benjamin out of Florida, Pahokee High School. And I don't have a whole lot of faith in this run game. I don't know what their scheme is going to be going forward, but they were ranked 127th in total offense last year, and they are worst in recruiting in the Big Ten. Not doing a whole lot in the transfer game, in and out. They didn't lose or gain a whole lot, and their leading rusher was Mononga with 445 yards last year. Um,
Who's
so we'll
your
see how that comes.
out of that
What's up?
room, Ethan? Out of that room, I just got out of that room, the running
Yeah,
back room. Who do you think's most likely to make the biggest impact for Rutgers on this season? If you had to choose
honestly,
the one
looking
guy, if you had to choose just that one player,
actually, it'd be a fifth is who I would pick. I like Samuel Brown the fifth.
I love.
He only played in 7 games, 4.3 yard
Okay,
average. Had a good play from scrimmage, and just he played in 5 less games and was within 100 yards of Mr. Manangai. So I think that he's could make the biggest impact if they let him go. He's a sophomore, and but yeah,
so
overall, what's
do
up?
you with Rutgers, how their guys, how their team's built, right? A bunch of
Right.
three-star guys. Um, to put him in the best situation, do you think they're going to be more edge rushing or try to get not your typical style run up the gut Big Ten run game? Do you think they're going to try to get him out on the edges and get him into space for him to
Well,
be successful?
oddly, I would say it doesn't matter a whole lot. Rutgers and Maryland both finished in the middle of the Big Ten in rushing yards per game last year, seventh and
Okay.
eighth respectively. Um, I don't know if they're going to have a whole lot of issues, especially with the seasoned-ish offensive line returning. I would say up the gut could lead to some bigger problems. You're going to run into some higher-rated recruits, linebackers, but there's no shortage of edge talent either in the Big Ten. So find a place that works and shove it down their throat.
Absolutely. Do you have anything else out of the running back room here? I know you said you had quite a few things to get through, so
Yeah, most of it's Maryland. I dug and dug, and I couldn't get a whole lot out of Rutgers. Overall, I gave them about a D in the running back room, rated them about
absolutely.
a 62 out of 100. But I'm
Absolutely.
hoping for on the way up. They're young where the talent is.
Drew, I'm gonna hit you with the slant right here.
Do it.
Hit the wide receivers for us, buddy.
All right. Well, Maryland wide receiver room definitely not as exciting as the Maryland. Um, so Kirk Sriracha is the new OC.
Okay.
He was PJ Fleck's offensive coordinator at Western and at Minnesota. So he likes to run the ball. So RBs are going to get some work, and then he likes to go over the top with his receivers. So let's look at the receivers. So they're losing their top two highest receivers in receiving yards, Sean Ryan and Aaron Cruikshank.
Yes.
They also lose Shameen Jones, which isn't a big deal, but just more loss there. They return uh, highest their highest returning receiver is actually their tight end, Johnny Langan. He's a senior. He had 483 yards. He's also ran for over 800 yards in his 3 year career. So they might be getting into like some tight end rounds or some crazy different kind of stuff. Isaiah Washington returns. He's had 600 yards in his 4 year career. Chris Long returns. He had 15 receptions for 200 last year. And then Christian Dremel and Max Patterson are also returning. They're more special teams guys. They've got a combined 12 career receptions. So maybe they get involved. The big one is they bring in transfer Nassim Brantley, 6'4". I guess he'll be a grad transfer. He's been just going around the FCS putting numbers up since 2018. Last year, he was at Western Illinois. He had 53 receptions for 903 yards and 9 TDs. Before that, he was at Sacred Heart for 3 years and put up over 1,300 yards there. So he seems like he's probably going to be like the number one go-to receiver outside of the tight end. Recruits coming in, 3-star Dylan Braithwaite from New York, 3-star Ian Strong from Long Island. He's listed as a safety, but he's on the depth chart I looked at. He's either going to play wide receiver and safety, or he's switching to wide receiver.
That kid is an athlete because I had him on my safety side, and I was watching some of his stuff, man. That kid's an athlete. Yeah.
Good, because Rutgers needs athletes. And then
lots of them.
Yeah. And then one last recruit, Devon Fuse, 6'4" wide receiver, 3-star from Pennsylvania. He's top 1,000 nationally ranked, so might be some potential there.
Remember what the coach said in draft day, where he was like, that kid's got a wicked first step, talking about Vontae Mack.
Mm-hmm.
Draft day, where that's like, that's what Ian Strong reminded me of when I was watching his high school tape. It was all safety footage because that's what he was in there for. So, but like they would have him creep up to the line, and you would just see his wicked first step right between a gap, and he was just right there, and it's like, oh, okay. Like this kid is now, given what competition he's playing in, I'm not sure what the New York competition is where he was at, but I mean, the kid's just got a wicked first step.
Okay. So maybe look out for Ian Strong a couple of years. So yeah, just my general outlook for the Rutgers wide receiver room. I have one word down here. It's called sketchy. No standout playmakers. Tight end Johnny Lingan is probably going to be the number one go-to. Then Brantley, the transfer, comes in, and I kind of think he's going to be wide receiver 1, just because there's not really anything else here.
Yeah.
So kind of, it's a disappointing room. I'd probably give it like a D+.
Yeah, I was looking at like the team stats here for Rutgers last year. That we only threw for roughly they threw for 1847 yards, a total of 11 touchdowns with 14 interceptions. And on the receiving end, their leading receiver last year only had 444 yards.
Yeah.
They didn't play a whole lot of offense last year because they didn't run the ball a whole lot either.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was even looking at their rushing, and it was, I mean, they had 1,500 yards rushing with 11 touchdowns. So they didn't do a lot of offense. Oh, wow. Yeah. 11-11.
22 touchdowns. Makes sense why they went 1-8 in Big Ten competition last year.
Absolutely makes sense. I think for Rutgers, if I'm being honest, I think Greg Schiano needs to stop trying to play Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State football, and he needs to start playing RPO football. Start playing your Purdue, Indiana, your Minnesota style football on offense because it works. Number one, I don't think you can say it doesn't work when you saw Purdue dismantle Ohio State, simply running the RPO. So I really think like I think Greg Schiano needs to reevaluate his offensive scheme and get to that RPO. Because then like we saw at Minnesota, you start getting the better recruits when you start, you know, putting up at least points, you know.
And I think bringing in Kirk Sriracha is exactly what Shiano's doing, what he's thinking. Run the ball.
Yep.
Yep.
Corey, any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, you don't really expect Rutgers to be good on offense, especially in the conference they play and the side of the Big Ten they play. So, I mean, it feels like any production that Rutgers gets that wasn't seen or by anybody incoming just seems like a positive for Rutgers.
Absolutely. Corey, you told us how Rutgers is gonna match up on the offensive line. On the other side of the trench, how are they gonna match up against other teams? What is their defensive line unit looking like here?
I think that's kind of their hope. Their hope for and saving grace for Rutgers might be their defensive line. Their defensive line last year was, I won't say great, but I think was better than average for the team that they put on the field. They lose a Finny Major to the NFL, but they return Bailey and Aaron Lewis, who last year combined for 16 tackles for loss and 5 sacks, um, and are regarded so far as highly defensive ends in the Big Ten, and could be near the top of the Big Ten. Obviously, you're going to have bigger schools with better players, but for a smaller school, I think that Bailey and Aaron Lewis are really solid. Um, they have fifth-year senior Mayan Ahantu,
Love it.
and junior
It's okay.
Kayonte Hamilton, who is participate Kayonte Hamilton, who's participating in his first full spring camp as a full-time player, is a huge interior lineman who did play some snaps last season. A couple young players to kind of look out for. Kenny Fletcher, who had 1.5 sacks and 2.5 tackles for loss last season. Jordan Thompson, who had 18 total tackles. Troy Rainey had a tackle for loss. Renee Conga had a sack. And all of those guys have season experience and I think could make a difference on the defensive line.
Absolutely. Um,
Okay.
Something that complements two aspects that complement a good defensive line. The main aspect of it is your corners. However, a group that helps them out probably the most is the linebackers. And the run stoppage, and blitzing that quarterback. Ethan, what does that room look like for Rutgers?
Empty. So, in terms of what they brought to the table last year, leading tackler Deion Jennings, 91 tackles and a sack. He's gone. Assumed a graduation. Couldn't find any NFL draft or anything. Didn't find any transfer information on him. He was a senior, so I'm going to assume Deion Jennings has graduated and is on to his next life. Fourth leading tackler on the team, Tyrene Powell, is probably going to be one of their strongest points on the linebacking core next year. Jameer Wright Collins also is still here, but you lose. I mean, the only significant tackling bunches Jennings and Powell. Collins, and then Austin Dean, he transferred out to Georgia Tech. this offseason. Micah Wing, Anthony Johnson, and Kerry Banton also went in the portal. So you've got four linebackers gone to the portal, one graduated. They did bring in, I'm sorry, they still have four-star rated linebacker who's a sophomore and Moses Walker, hoping to see big things out of him. And then Abram Wright is a three-star that they signed from Fleming Island, Florida. But they're empty, they're young, and I'm hoping that they can build on that. But I gave them a D, rated them at about a 64. I think that they're very empty, very young, and they've got a lot to build on going into next year.
Absolutely, absolutely. Drew, the next group is probably the one of the most important on your defense is your defensive back groups. They keep everything in front. They allow time for the blitzes to get home for your linebackers and defensive linemen. They try to hold down the back end of the field as best as they can. How are those cornerbacks doing out there for Rutgers and East Rutherford?
Uh, well, I'm more optimistic about this group than the wide receiver group. They only lose two guys, Avery Young and Christian Braswell. Braswell was a like a starter last year. If not, he was the third guy. So that's kind of big losing him. Avery Young was more of a utility guy, special teams guy. But they return their top two corners in Robert Longerbeam, who had 67 tackles, 2 picks, and 15 pass deflections over the past 2 seasons. Max Melton, a 6 foot junior, he also returns. He's had 80 tackles, 4 picks, and 16 pass deflections over 3 years. So those two are far and away gonna lead this group. They also return Keyshawn Abraham and Carnell Davis. Both of those guys have been mostly special teams guys, so they could possibly step up and step in. Transfers, they bring in two of them, two decent transfers, both from the MAC. Charles Amakwa is a 3-star from Akron. Last year, he only played 4 games. He was injured, but in 21, he had 48 tackles, 4 for a loss, 3 picks, and 9 pass deflections. He was academic all MAC. So he's smart, and from the stats, he's pretty solid.
Yeah.
They also bring in Eric Rogers, another 3-star. He's from Northern Illinois. He's had 45 tackles, 2 picks, and 5 pass deflections in 2 years over at Northern Illinois. The past 2 years, Northern Illinois has not been very good. So I don't exactly know what to think about Mr. Rogers here. Recruits, they only bring in one cornerback, Bo Masco. He's a 3-star from Florida, but he is top 1,000 nationally ranked. So that's a pretty good land for Shiano there.
Absolutely.
So my outlook is I'm not overly confident, especially with the wide receivers in this league. I don't know who's going to be guarding, Harrison, freaking Cephas at Penn State.
I mean, who's going to be?
Well, who can guard Harrison to begin with? So
that's
right.
a great
So are they
question.
just going to be playing more damage control, for lack of better words? Don't get beat big.
yeah, pretty much. I think, like I said, the top two guys, Longerbeam and Melton, I think are very solid. I don't know if they're like Sunday players, but I mean they're good. They're good for Rutgers. So
Yes.
as long as those two can stay healthy and anchor down this room, I think they'll be pretty decent. And as well as there's a transfer coming in at safety, Flip Dixon, and he's supposed to be a stud. So That just adds more to
He's
the
uh he's
DBs.
he's from Minnesota.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He's a Minnesota transfer coming in. And then he's their strong. He's listed on this depth chart as their strong safety. And then their free safety, or their or sideline safety, or whatever they want to call it. Then their other safety is Desmond Igbinosun. Probably butchered that. Then they have Elijah Mack, Shaquan Loyal, Joe Lusardi, and Thomas Amanqua, Amanqua as a redshirt freshman. Outside of Thomas, okay, guys, this safety room is all juniors and seniors.
Big year for the secondary.
And
Like
their only safety recruit, okay, is now listed as their ex wide receiver, probably their ex, Ian Strong, who's an incoming freshman. So Shiano
Sounds
needs
like
to
Ian's going to
recruit.
be doing a lot of running.
Yeah. And it sounds like Shiano needs to get on a little defensive end recruiting, especially in his safety room this season.
Isn't he a defensive guy?
Yeah,
traditionally, yeah.
traditionally, but
He's
um,
he's got a hell of a project over there at Rutgers, dude.
hell of a
I do not
project.
envy him.
Not at all. I don't really have much on the safeties outside of the Maryland transfer. He's going to lead that room and be the leader, and he's probably going to be the captain of the secondary, I would imagine. He's just an athlete. We've seen him play. He's really, really good. Especially for Rutgers, he's going to be really, really good for their defense. Hopefully, he can give them some leadership, some experience, some more confidence in their playing abilities, so that way we could see Rutgers not be 1-8 in the Big Ten and 4-8 overall. Maybe we can get them to 6-6.
You should see their schedule. I don't know about that.
Well,
I was gonna say not
There.
likely.
we're gonna go over their
Not this year.
schedule here. We're definitely gonna go over their schedule here. So, just give me 1 second here, fellas. I want to
You
do.
look at Northwestern and Temple week 1 and 2. You get Vatek week 3, Wagner week 5, and then Sparty in Indiana.
Alrighty, hold on.
Before
We're going over it here. Just give
Mhm.
me 1
absolutely
second.
buzzsaw to
I
end
don't.
the season.
I don't even see 4 wins on their season.
Oh, Wagner's a given,
Damn.
right? Northwestern, Wagner, Temple, maybe. There's
Right.
3.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
Who
Temple's no
else?
good.
Michigan State. They'll be on a new coach by then.
I got 3 question marks: Indiana, Sparty, and Virginia Tech. But Virginia Tech brings in a lot of transfers, so I don't really know what to think of VTech right now.
Yeah,
And just because Northwestern was bad, you don't expect necessarily them to.
I don't expect Patty Fitz to hold serve there.
Oh, probably not. So they open up against Northwestern, then Temple, Virginia Tech. They travel to Ann Arbor. They're home against Wagner, at Wisconsin, home against Sparty, at Indiana, home against the Buckeyes, at Iowa, at Penn State, and then finish off with the rival home versus Maryland.
I mean, realistically, if you look at their home game, they're not going to, it's going to be an offer on the road. They're going to hold up a goose egg on the road, but they could win. I mean, there's question marks across the board. You're almost guaranteed 3 home wins and 3 home question marks.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think
right.
Temple and Wagner are guarantees, kind of.
Okay.
I'm setting the over under at 2.5.
Ethan, your record overall for Rutgers this season?
3-9.
3-9.
I advocated for everything else, but I'm going 3-9.
Alrighty. Who were their 3 wins against?
Wagner, Temple, and I am going to do this. I'm going to say they win against Sparty.
Okay,
They win the game against Sparty.
alrighty. Drew, Rutgers' record this season.
I'm gonna say 4-8. Wins
Okay.
over Temple, Wagner, uh,
Western.
Northwestern, and at Indiana.
Alrighty.
Thought you were
Corey.
going to have them starting out 4-1 for a second.
I really want to pick Rutgers to beat a really good team like we don't expect them to, like Iowa. At Iowa, I would love to pick them, but I see 3 wins. I mean, I think they can beat Northwestern just because it's at home. I feel like if it was on the road, you wouldn't really feel like they would have a
Yep.
chance.
Agreed.
They can beat that Temple is not very good. Wagner is not very good. I feel like Virginia Tech is early enough in the year that if they play good football, they might be able to surprise them, and maybe pick up a fourth win. But I see 3 wins.
I absolutely. I'm with Corey and Ethan on this one. Sorry, yes, Corey and Ethan. I think it's about 3 wins. They go about 3-9 with those 3 teams that you guys mentioned. Um,
Yeah. I
all
went
right.
homer on the Northwestern pick. That was a coin flip.
I like it. I like it though. I like it.
Well, that's four. That's
That's
four if
4.
they get it.
No,
That's
no.
4.
Mm.
Petty Fitz needs a good start to the season.
I like it. All right, guys. Let's get on. Let's get here to Maryland football. Um, let's start. I'm gonna just quickly go over the quarterback, the only one to mention out of Maryland. We all know his name,
Do you?
Boomer Esiason.
huh?
The
Boomer
best.
Esiason.
Can we agree that he's the best quarterback in the Big Ten?
No,
Oh,
I wouldn't go that
Okay.
far,
oh, oh.
no.
but
Depends
McCarthy.
on how Drew Aller plays.
we know
I would
if
R-
say I would
That
say
today.
JJ. I would say JJ and potentially Cade at
well,
Iowa.
I see Jay. They're both game managers. I don't know about that. I like Tagovailoa better than both of them personally.
that's what I'm saying. My boy, this guy Tagovailoa. That's all we're. He's the only one. He's the only one to speak about here out of this quarterback room for Maryland. Um,
I hope.
I mean, what he has accomplished over his career. He was second All Big Ten last year. He was All Academic Big Ten selection. He was a um Offensive Player of the Week in September, a Davy O'Brien Award Grade 8 winner. He was on the Maxwell Award watch list, the Davy O'Brien watch list, the Johnny Unitas watch list, the Pro Football Focus second All Big Ten honors, Athlon Sports, and I could just continue to read off his accomplishments. This is where he ranks in program history within Maryland. He holds their career passing yards at 7,879, the single season passing yard record of 3,860 in 2021. He leads in career completions at 665. Single season completions 328, also in that record setting passing year in 2021. Career completion percentage at 67.4%. Single season completion percentage at 69.2% in 2021. He has career passing touchdowns of 51, single season touchdowns scored, which is 26 in 2021. That's also tied with Scott Milanovic from 1993. Um, he has 12 300-yard passing games, 6 single season 300-yard passing games, which he did 7, um, or sorry, single 300 yard passing, single season 300 passing game 7 in 2021. So he passed for 7 in a single season in 2021 of 300 yards. And then career total offense, he racks up 8,067 yards so far in his career. And the kid's not done. He did spend his freshman year at Alabama before transferring into Maryland. But in the past 3 years, I mean, what the kid is phenomenal. His career total highs, he rushed for 419 yards at Indiana in 2021. He had 4 touchdowns at Charlotte in 2022, 41 completions at Penn State in 2021. His longest pass was 76 yards against Minnesota in 2020, the COVID year, and then 300-yard passing games. His last one was against Purdue in 2022. So he didn't. So last season, I mean, the kid just balls, guys. I don't know if he's as good as his older brother, but damn, that's a hell of a career that he's put together so far in college. I don't even want to talk about any of the other quarterbacks because he's him. He's him. As long as
Oh,
he's
next
at
man up
quarterback,
mentality.
Hope he don't get hurt.
yeah, just
Yep.
hope he don't get hurt because I was looking
He
at it.
has.
He has, and I'll tell you what, Maryland football fans, it ain't pretty after he goes down. It's not pretty. So better hope that your boy stays healthy. Um, what he does best, it seems like, is he throws the ball. So, Drew, what weapons does he have at his disposal this season?
Well, uh, despite like their wide receiver losses are kind of big. I mean, we all know Raheem Jarrett, Dante Demas Jr., and Jacob Copeland. They all just got drafted. So he just had 3 receivers drafted. And I don't think the fall off is too hard. They actually returned their leading receiver, who was Jashawn Jones, who had just 557 yards last year, 4 TDs. So he will be the number 1, I assume. He's a grad. They also return Octavian Smith, who's an excellent special teams returner, kick returner, punt returner. He only had 12 receptions last year, but he's looking to take a bigger step. He's only a sophomore. Ty Felton also returns, junior, 6'2", 23 receptions for 309 last year and a pair of TDs. The tight end position looks pretty solid. They bring back Corey Dykes, who had 39 for just under 500 and 3 TDs last year. So the production returning looks pretty decent. I mean, granted, you're losing some big dudes who take away like the defensive backs. Like the defensive backs are tagging on Raheem Jarrett and Dante Demas because they're studs.
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of these guys are outright studs. I think Jashawn Jones is pretty solid. But as a sophomore and junior, what was that, 2 and 3 years ago, he only played 4 and 6 games respectively. So he might have some sort of injury issues. Not completely sure about that. But they do bring in 2 huge transfers. Caden Prather from West Virginia is a 6'3" wide receiver. He had 52 receptions for 500 yards and 3 TDs last year at West Virginia. I think he was West Virginia's best receiver last year. I expect him to be either wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, right up there with Jashawn Jones. And then they also bring in 4-star Tyrese Chambers from Florida International. He had 45 receptions for 1,074 yards last year and 9 TDs. That's insane. His yards per catch was 23.9. That's insane, dude. He was second nationally in that category.
Whew.
So obviously, this dude is just a playmaker.
Baller.
He's gonna, he could be big time. So
Baller.
between Chambers, Prather, and Jones, and then the other returners, this room looks pretty solid.
Absolutely.
They bring in a pair of 3-star recruits, Ryan Manning from Baltimore and Braden Wisłowski from Pennsylvania. Uh, I I don't expect to really see those guys on the field. So pretty much this room looks pretty solid. There's some talent here. Loxley recruits pretty well. Um, Josh Gaddis coming in as OC. I think we all know Josh Gaddis. Kevin Sumlin is also coming in as
Like
co
it.
OC. That's pretty big. So um,
Like that.
I like what Maryland's doing.
Me too. Got to have a good running game to complement a good passing game.
It's very
Ethan.
true. They aren't going to be slacking in the run game this year either. I tell you that right now.
No.
They were 66th nationally in rushing last year, 141 yards a game, 3.9 yards a carry. Not too hateful. Nothing big coming in from the portal or no one real super big committing. They had a fourth, fifth string running back transferred out. I couldn't find a new current school at the time. I did see that he transferred elsewhere. I just forget where he went. But they're led by Roman Hemby. Almost ran for 1,000 yards, 989, 10 tutties. He caught 33 balls for almost 300 yards and a touchdown. Kid's good. They got Antoine Littleton the second backing him up. Both these guys are red shirt sophomores, so they've got some play time left in them. I definitely think they're going to be the 2 stars of the backfield. I would assume Hemby's RB1 without a doubt. And they've also got 3-star interest in Gideon Ituka from Gathersburg, Maryland, and Jacorian Caffey from Avon, Ohio. Both are 3 stars. I did see online they're both leaning warm towards a Boston College commitment, both of them. And they also have a potential commitment as a warm status 4-star running back Dylan Jones. They did
Huh.
offer him, and he is a warm commit. So he was also up there with Wisconsin, Oklahoma, and I think possibly Virginia Tech. So hoping to snag him in the backfield. So not too hateful there. They get the top 5 worst run defenses in the Big Ten next season, as well as 129 nationally in the Charlotte 49ers week 2, and the Virginia Cavaliers ranked 49th nationally week 3. I think that if anything happens to the quarterback, they will be in good hands in the backfield. Um, I don't, I pretty good high hopes for this running back room. I've got them ranked at about a B overall. I gave them an 83. I think there's a lot of high potential, and if the offense is that strong around them, then they're just going to take the weight off everybody else doing what they're doing. I think it's going to, there could be a dark horse this year in some games.
Absolutely. Corey, the unit that's going to hold this entire offense together that it all rides on. The boys in the trenches, man. How is those guys? How are the big boys up front looking for Maryland this year on the offensive line?
I I am very high on Maryland's offensive line this year. They are building, it seems like, a big front, which is big time. So last year they obviously lost Jalen Duncan, which was a big part of their offense last year. So
Yes.
that hurts. But they do bring in Andre Roy, who I think was a Penn State commit who Maryland flipped on signing day. To bring him in, and he is a 6'6", 320-pound tackle. So
Jesus.
that's a big
A big
man
boy.
majama at that's a big man majama at left tackle. Um, at left guard, they have Mason Lunsford, who has started games before and has 1 year left. He was been the highest rated run blocker on Maryland's starting line. So that's something to look forward to. At center, they have Colton Deary, who has high expectations, has like a wrestling background from high school, so he's not afraid to mix it up in the middle of that line there. Right guard is kind of a spot where it might be kind of a plug and play
Yeah.
for a few spots. The guys I'm looking at, Emilio Moran is a fifth year senior, and then we also have Gottlieb Ayedzi is a 6'5", 300 pound guy transferred in from junior college from Frostburg State. So six
Oh,
five 300. I mean, as many guys you can get on the line like that, you're doing something right. And then at right tackle might be the best of the whole bunch. You've got DJ Glaze, maybe
yep.
someone you don't recognize, but according to PFF, his 87.3 pass blocking rating is seventh best nationally among tackles.
Yeah. No, I was gonna
Wow.
say this
So,
this kid's like this kid is one of the best right tackles in the country.
yep. And so you're
Yeah.
looking at potentially 3 or 4 guys that are 6 foot, over 300 pounds. That Maryland's offensive line is looking strong.
Absolutely. Whew.
Oh yeah.
So their offense is going to be sick,
Their offense
basically.
is
Yeah.
definitely going to be
But
sick. Hopefully,
can they stop anybody?
that is what we're going to get into. Um, can they stop people? It all starts. Obviously, I think we all agree when it comes to defense, your most important thing is stopping the run, right? To stop the
Right.
run, you have to have, in my opinion, well, you have to have a complete defense to be able to do that, right? Because you have to be able to cover downfield. You have to be able to have a defensive line that can get into the backfield, and you have to have linebackers who can play side to side, right? And who can also play north south.
Right.
Um, so you really do need a kind of a complete defense to be able to stop the run. But it all starts with two main groups. That's the defensive line and your linebackers. Um, Ethan, go ahead and give us the linebacker group, um, and then
Yep.
we'll get Corey to tell us how the defensive line is going to help that linebacker group.
I think the linebacking group looks pretty strong going into next season. I actually really like this linebacking group. Also, they returned their number 3 tackler and Jayshon Barham, and
The
he
captain.
had only yeah, he only had 58 tackles, but 4 sacks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. They lost 2 guys to the draft in Darrell Nakami and Vendarius Cohen. They were UDFAs in the NFL draft. And they also had 4 guys transfer out. Uh,
Right.
but they didn't lose anyone substantial. Ahmad McCullough went to Wazoo, Terrence Butler Jr. to Charlotte, Cameron Blunt to Bowie State, and Andrew Booker to BGSU. Um, didn't lose a lot last year in forms of production. They did pick up a 4-star commit, Michael Harris, who's supposed to be a stud linebacker from Lake Brantley High School in Florida. Daniel Wingate, also very good 3-star, and Dylan Gooden, 3-star they've got signed. But they return one, two, three, four, five, 6 of their top 20 tacklers. Fanaje Dote and Jeremy Spraggins are supposed to be elite in forms of what they're working with. So they could have 3 to 5 really strong linebackers coming into this year, especially on the way up. They've got 7 upperclassmen, 6 unders. So good
Absolutely.
mix there. I gave them a B plus. I gave them an 87. I think they've got a lot of high hopes in that Maryland linebacking core.
Absolutely. Corey, how is the defensive line gonna make it easier on this linebacking core to be in those gaps, get to the
Not
quarterback?
It's
Okay.
not.
Okay. So they're
It's
not.
not. So I mean, you've got a few guys that you could obviously do some stuff with. They obviously lost senior Mosiah Nasili Kite, who was a very solid defensive tackle, interior lineman, who was one of the big boys up front, stopping the run. I look for Tommy Aking Basotti to take his place.
Yes.
He was a 4-star recruit and did play significant reps last season. So I look for him to kind of move into that role. I also like Taze Johnson, who is a former 4-star, as well as Tank Booker. All of these guys have played along the defensive line before, have significant reps. So that is good to see. They did get a transfer, Donnell Brown from St. Francis, who when you first like hear about it, you're like, oh, okay, well, St. Francis, they're not good at football.
Right.
But this guy's a stud. Donnell Brown is a stud. I look for him to get in. Jordan Phillips is a guy that no one's really talking about. He's a transfer from Tennessee, so we can potentially see him. And then another guy, my guy to watch is Isaac Bunyan. Fun
Isaac
name,
Bunyan.
and not
Love
only
it.
a fun name, but also a big dude. So, again, their defensive line took a hit. They lost players, but they have some talent on there. I just don't know that they're going to be able to stack up when you get in to play your big football games that we want Maryland to potentially win when they stack up against solid, big offensive linemen. We'll see. Obviously, they had a lot of practice because Maryland's offensive line is gigantic. So maybe that will help them later in the down the road.
Absolutely.
Good news for them is they don't draw many of those this year, so they're
No.
That's
probably
right.
not super worried about that.
No. Drew, the group that's going to give these two other groups the time that they need downfield to rush the quarterback, the corners, and safeties, the defensive back groups. Take us through the corners because I only have one safety, and let me just say his name real quick. His name is Avante Williams, the junior transfer from the U. I'm gonna throw it up here real quick. The U. Let me tell you something.
Gotcha.
Let me tell you something. I know they're bringing back their two starting safeties, but this kid is gonna be a starter by week 3. That's all I'm gonna say about the
Okay.
safety room.
Possibly. Yeah, the safety room is sick, dude.
The safety room is sick.
Both their top two returning tacklers are both
Safe.
safeties, Bo Braid and Dante Trader.
Yes.
Those dudes are just dogs. And Avante Williams, I also heard that he's supposed to come in and be a pretty dog. So
Dude,
that's good because the cornerback room does not look nice. I was actually stoked to get wide receivers and corners for Maryland because those are my biggest questions for Maryland. Like
ooh,
obviously they lose first round draft pick Deontay Banks.
yes.
They also lose Jacorion Benton, who was
Yes.
also drafted. I don't know where he went. But losing those two is absolutely huge. They're the returners. Tarheeb Still is a senior, 6'1". Over the last 2 seasons, he's had over 100 tackles, 7 for loss, a pair of sacks, only 1 pick, but 12 passes defended. So I expect him to be sort of the veteran leader for the cornerback room, at least.
Yes.
Behind him, Corey Coley Jr. returns. He had 14 tackles last year. And then Lionel Whitaker and Chance Harley also returned. Those were some special teams guys. They're just there for depth. They bring in one big transfer, Jaquan Shepard. He's from Cincinnati. He had a big year last year, 50 tackles, 4.5 for loss, 10 passes defended. From what I've heard, he's expected to start next to Tarheeb Still. Recruits, they only bring in one true cornerback, 3-star Tavon Nelson from Brooklyn, 6'1", 175. Nothing too crazy there. But yeah, so
How would you
the
give
core
this defensive back room a grade? If you had to grade them,
if I had to grade them separately, they would be drastically different. But if I'm going to grade them together, safeties and corners, I'm
yes,
thinking around a B, B minus.
that's what I
Um,
was. That's what I gave them too.
yeah, and that's pretty good. I mean, losing Deontay Banks and Jacorian Benton.
Yes, your top
Um,
two.
yeah, so I'm slightly concerned if like the cornerbacks get banged up and they have to start using the depth. That could be an issue late in the season. But like I said, like a B, B minus for the DBs.
Yes, I like that. Um,
Heck yeah.
I think they could give. I think they could give the defensive line and linebacker group enough time to get home against certain teams. Obviously, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be harder against your top, your Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan's because of just their wide receiver talent level, and the talent level obviously of their offensive line as well. But I think when you're looking at Maryland, honestly, guys, I think if they were not in the East Division, they could make a run at the West and be playing in Indianapolis in December. Um, I think they have all the tools to do it if they didn't have to compete against Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Because those three are going to be most likely your division winner. Um, that's just my opinion with Maryland football. I mean, when you look at last year, they were 4-5 in the Big Ten, 8-5 overall. And who did they finish behind? Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. So I really think and I mean, I think they played two of them last year and lost both of those games. So I mean, you take two of those losses away, you add, like what Purdue did last year, and that kind of puts them right where Purdue was, and they're kind of in that Big Ten championship game, in Indianapolis. So I really think things are looking good for Maryland football. Took a while. They had a big controversy with a coach telling a kid not to go drink some water and and all everything that happened. And it looks like their coach here, Mike Loxley, has really turned it around since all that happened, which is very good to see for Maryland football. Guys, this year they opened the season with 3 straight home games against Towson, Charlotte, Virginia. They go on the road to Sparty, so they head to East Lansing. They'll host Indiana the next week. They travel to Columbus. They um, then host the Fighting Illini, and then have to travel to Evanston. So they host the one Illinois team, and then they're traveling to Illinois the next week. And
Your bye
then,
week in there.
oh yeah, sorry, they have the bye week, and then they finish off with home against Penn State, at Nebraska, home against Michigan, and then at Rutgers. When you look at their schedule, we'll go through it here. What do you what do you guys think their record will be? We'll go here with Ethan again.
Looking at it initially, I only saw losses against the big three. So I had them at 9-3. But looking at where they play Nebraska, they get them in Nebraska week 11. If they've got everything shored up in Nebraska, that's a coin flip game. I think all the other games are pretty much pre-decided. So I'm going to hold on to my 9-3 prediction, but that Nebraska game's a big question mark and probably going to be a really good game, Big Ten game.
Ethan 9-3. All right, all right. I like that. Drew, what do you think for for Maryland this year?
Well, I think the schedule is excellent. It's very favorable. They draw Nebraska, Northwestern, and Illinois from the West. Can't really get a better draw than that. I lightweight think that Maryland will be 5-0 when they go to Ohio State. So that'll be a primetime game. I have them at 8-4. Um, with I'm the losses, Penn, Ohio State, Michigan, and then they'll blow one. Um, but if they don't, they could win 9 games. I also think they host Michigan a week after Michigan is at Penn State. So I think that's a trap game. I think they could possibly upset Michigan. So 8-4, 9-3.
Okay. Well, you got to stick with one here. I'm keeping track.
I'll do 8-4. It's safer.
8-4.
It's
All right,
safer.
Corey, let's get your thoughts on Michigan or
So
Maryland season.
I mean, I'm kind of between three. Like I'm between 8-4, 9-3, and even 10-2. I mean, I see we talk about their offense. Their offense is going to score on anybody. I don't care what defense, with Talia back there, they're going to load up on offense. So if their defense can actually stop somebody, they'll win games. I I I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go 10-2.
Who are
I
their
think they're
two
gonna go ten and
losses?
two. Ohio State and Michigan. That's
Okay.
it. I think they're definitely 5-0. I think they will lose to Ohio State at Ohio State. They have Penn State at home. I think they can win that. I do agree that Michigan might be on upset alert that weekend, just coming off. It's smashed in between the Ohio State game. It's one of those things that you could overlook. I just I don't know. Maryland had Michigan on the ropes in Ann Arbor last year and couldn't get it done. So I'm not going to think that they're going to get it done. But I think Penn State breaking in a new quarterback, obviously he'll have some reps, but I mean, that's going to end up being a big game, especially if Maryland only has one loss heading into that game. Um, I think that's a big game. So I'm going to go 10-2 and finish third in the East.
Okay.
Like
I,
it. I
I
like
have
it.
them. Yeah, I like that a lot. However, though, I have them going 8-4 along with Drew. I mean, their schedule is very favorable. I do think they'll be 5-0 going into the Ohio State game, which they lose. Um, I think they, I think they lose against Penn State. Um, and I think with Nebraska sandwiched in between Penn State, they go Penn State at Nebraska, then home against Michigan. Um, I think Nebraska might get the best of them that weekend. And then I just think, like Corey said, they'll have them on the ropes again at home against Michigan, and and they just will run out of gas because of the two previous weeks that they just played against them. And Nebraska's not going to be a slouch this year. I'm going to tell you everyone that now. They're not going to be a pushover 60-3 Scott Frost team. So they're gonna play some football this year. So I really think that is a quote unquote gauntlet, if you will, for Maryland. Now, if they could survive that gauntlet, like Corey said, they could be 10-2. If they beat Penn State and Nebraska, I think they're 10-2. But I'm gonna go with 8-4 for the season. Um,
I mean, I feel like if they're liable to beat anybody, it'd be Michigan, just the way the schedule's set up. But
yeah,
Yeah.
I
anything's possible.
With it being that late, I worry about depth issues, especially
yes,
in on the defensive side.
exactly. Yeah, because
I get that.
they're not Maryland's not really deep. At many positions, especially that they play like a nickel defense really, with
Yeah.
that Jack and nickel corner. So that really almost kind of hurts you, if you will. When you're talking
Could I
about
talk you
depth.
into Maryland beating Ohio State in Columbus?
No,
You sure?
positive.
Could
I don't.
happen.
It
Oh,
could.
that's why they
I'm
play the game.
That's why
because
they play the game.
You get
Huh?
Notre Dame at
What was
Notre
that the week
Dame.
before?
No, timeout. So you get Notre Dame in Notre Dame
Hold on,
under the lights against
Oh,
Sam Hartman. Get a bye week, and then you get Maryland at noon or 3:30, which I assume they kicked the game back to 3:30 to favor the Buckeyes. I mean, and then they're going at Purdue.
Penn
Ohio
State
State
was,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, it's in the middle of a bit of an issue. I don't know, man. I could see
Mhm.
some weird shit happen
Look,
off this Maryland schedule.
you're not wrong,
Maryland's catching people off weird weeks.
but I'll take stats over some things. And the stat is that Ryan Day has only lost to one head coach in the Big Ten.
So far.
Twice.
At this
And
point.
he's only lost 2 total Big Ten games, but he's only lost to one head coach. Up to this point, you're right. Up to this point, he's only lost to one head coach in the Big Ten.
Oh, I was about to say, because didn't he lose to Kirby
I mean, he
last
lost
year?
to Kirby, and then he lost to. I mean, his losses to listen to these coaches that he's lost to: Jim Harbaugh, okay,
Jim
Kirby
Harbaugh
Smart,
again.
Twice.
Kirby Smart,
Twice.
and
He was to Nick
then
Saban.
he lost to Nick Saban, and he lost to Dabo Sweeney. Three of those
And he
four.
lost-
Three of
And he
those
lost
four.
to Oregon's head coach,
Oh
too.
yeah, he lost to Oregon's head coach. Sorry.
Is that Mario? Did he lose to
Cristobal?
Cristobal?
Yeah.
Cristobal.
That's a bad
Yeah.
loss.
That'll keep you out of the that loss will keep you out of the tournament, buddy.
Well, did.
So Ryan Day is a solid second tier coach.
No, I mean look at it. I'm 4 out of the 5, 6 coaches he's lost to or something have all won a national title.
You could
Yeah.
say he might have been born on third base.
I've heard that, yeah.
I've heard that he can't beat the best.
Well, if he was born on third base, then all I have to say in that comment to Jim Harbaugh is win something other than your conference.
But I mean, Ryan Day hasn't won anything other than his conference.
He's won the Rose Bowl.
Okay. Do you get a
He's
do you get a
won-
ring for do you get a ring for winning the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, you get a
think
bowl
you- I
ring.
think
you get a
You get a
ring.
bowl ring. You get a bowl
I
ring.
think you get
A bowl
ring
ring,
for all
okay.
the dumb
You get a
stuff
bowl
like
ring.
it,
Yeah, you get a ring for all the
Jim
dumb stupid
Harbaugh's
shit.
got back-to-back Big Ten champions on his ring right now.
So does Ryan Day. He has 2 of them.
So
That's what I'm saying. I think there's if you're ranking the Big Ten coaches and who you trust. I mean, there's the top 2, Harbaugh and Ryan Day, and
Like
then you
watching two
have
rich
The
kids
right
fight
order,
over
yeah.
it.
and then you have
Yeah.
everybody else. I mean, then you have Harbaugh and Ryan Day, and then your tier 2 is just James Franklin, and then in my opinion, there's everybody else until
It's like watching two rich kids fight over whose inheritance
Yeah,
is
I don't
bigger.
think
Exactly.
that. I think
Exactly.
I think there's
1000%.
probably like 4 coaches are probably in the top tier.
until
You're talking S tier college football. There's
I
6, 7 coaches.
there's
Right.
and
No, there's
James
there's-
Franklin ain't one of the top
Saban.
6 coaches
No,
in the country.
It's Saban, Kirby Smart, and then it's everybody else.
Well, I'm saying in the Big Ten. In the Big Ten,
In
you
the
have
Big-
Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh, then it's James Franklin, and then
Patty
it's
Fitz.
everybody else. Then it's everybody else.
I
Patty
mean,
Fitz.
you also-
Everybody else.
Patty Fitz has been to
Nebraska's a
Indy
good-
twice.
Nebraska has a good coach. He's top tier.
I think
Until he proves himself in the Big Ten.
I think a year from now this list is going to be different.
100%.
Yeah, because Mel Tucker won't be on it.
Matt Rule.
Matt Rule will be
That's what
up
I'm
there,
saying,
and
but,
Ryan Day might not even be
Fickle.
in Columbus anymore.
Well,
Fickle is up there.
Old man Kirk Ferentz. I mean, you can't
Yeah,
look
I-
past
Oh
old man.
God!
I wouldn't
Is it
consider
time-
him top tier.
The Big Ten has
second
better
tier.
coaches than any other conference. Has more
Top
better
to bottom,
coaches
I
than
would
any other.
say so.
It's a deeper conference.
Top to
Yeah, I
bottom, they
agree.
have better coaches. But I wouldn't sit here and tell you that
PJ's in the conference.
That
PJ
Kirk-
ain't no slouch.
I mean, I would take Nick Saban over everybody. That's just unfortunately the way it is. It's just, I mean,
If you're
I
telling
think most
me
people would.
here's a contract, I'm taking Lincoln Riley.
For
The guy
offense.
who's never won.
for
Yep.
offense,
He wants it
He-
though. Saban's had it. Riley wants it.
Who wins the title first, Garrett Riley or Lincoln Riley?
Oh,
That's a good question.
that's a real
Probably
good question.
Lincoln.
Probably
Yeah,
Lincoln
same.
because
Wait,
he
He's
has
already
isn't
set
Caleb
up.
Garrett?
Williams.
Where's Garrett
'Cause he has
Riley at
Caleb
now? Isn't he in
Williams.
Georgia
Garrett Riley is the OC for Clemson.
for
Yeah, he went
Clemson?
to
Oh,
That's
Clemson.
why Clemson's gonna be
that's
sick.
right. Yeah, no.
Klubnik is a
Definitely,
stud.
Klubnik is a man.
definitely.
Yeah, he's a stud.
Their running backs are awesome. Will
Actually, you
Shipley
know
and
what?
Kobe Pace.
It probably will be Garrett Riley because they don't got to play anybody at
I mean,
Clemson.
Lincoln's going to win it this year, so I don't know what.
They're definitely. I mean,
They can.
they're the best team in the country, returning everybody.
You know who
Returning.
could also win the title? Toledo. But it ain't gonna happen.
No.
Yeah, they can. It's the beginning of the year. They have a shot. Everybody's 0-0.
Their conference sucks.
Well, yeah.
You going to
they're
give them the group
horrible.
of 5 bid?
Hell no.
Oh, okay.
You're never
asking
gonna
for
see
a
another.
friend.
You're not gonna see a group of 5 in the You're not
Sure
gonna see
you
a
will.
group of 5 in the 4-team playoff ever again
That's
because
fine.
this is the last year.
Because Ohio State cried and made it easier for them to get in every year.
No, because what you saw when Cincinnati went up against Alabama. That's
And Ohio State
exactly
went up
why.
against Alabama.
They competed for 3 quarters. They were in that game.
They were
Yeah.
not.
Really,
Oof.
really.
Thought it was game.
It was definitely a game.
Like
Toledo's only-
every other semifinal game is a blowout anyway.
But to be
Right.
fair, that Cincinnati team was disgusting. That team had a bunch of
The
studs.
team was good.
Yeah, that team had a bunch of studs.
I mean, Toledo draws one Power 5 team this year, and they play at Illinois week 1 under the lights. So
Oh,
they're
this
probably
is
not going to make
this
it.
is why it was a game. This is why the score did not reflect how bad Alabama beat Cincinnati. Bryce Young threw the ball only 28 times for 181 yards and a touchdown.
It's terrible.
Or
He
sorry,
went
for
number 1
three
pick.
touchdowns. For 3 touchdowns. Sorry. However,
And they're-
though, they ran the ball for 300 yards.
Well, yeah, but give some respect to Cincinnati's corners, who were both drafted and both started in the NFL last year. One was taken top 5, matter of fact,
And is a top 5.
and is a top
Is a
5
top
in
5.
year 2.
Is legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's dummy good.
That team was good. The team was really good. And when we talk about that, you talk about how they played Georgia close the year before, starting in their bowl game.
They could have won that game. I mean, very
Right.
easily could have changed the landscape of college football. You spin that game around,
Whoa. Wait, Georgia versus Cincinnati?
yeah.
Yep.
You could have changed the
It was
landscape
close.
of college
2022?
football.
Yep.
Just go back to you make that Boise State Oklahoma part 2. That's all you'd have to put on that.
Yeah. That would change things. Would Georgia have won back to back?
No,
Well, no, because they would have had.
they wouldn't have made it. I don't think they would
No,
have
that
gone
was
back.
in the Peach Bowl.
To
That
be
was the
fair,
Peach Bowl,
to be
so-
fair, how good would Georgia have been if Justin Fields just stayed?
I like that.
Would they have been better? I don't
Could they
know.
have been better or worse? I mean, is he Lamar
That's a
2.0?
tough question.
I like it.
But I mean, he was at Georgia. He was enrolled. He was
Yeah.
there.
He's a dog.
He's pretty solid.
Yeah. So
He's better than Stetson. I think we can agree.
I mean, what happens if Tulia stays at Alabama? Does he get lost in the shuffle? Maryland doesn't win nothing. Where are they going to get a quarterback from?
He'd be starting this year for sure.
Right.
Well, yeah.
He got nothing in the reserve tank now. Think of what he would have learned, though. They could have been two brothers early on
I
in
mean,
the
he
draft.
could have been the number 1 pick.
Yeah, does
if he
Caleb
stayed
Williams
at
pull a
Alabama.
Spencer Rattler? Does Williams
Caleb
pull
Williams-
a Rattler and
Caleb-
fall off a cliff?
I don't know. Maybe he'll write inappropriate things on his fingernails, and then they'll come true.
What if Caleb Williams just hopped in the transfer portal this year and was like, I'm going to Alabama? Like,
He wouldn't do
fuck
that.
USC, I'm going to go win a national title.
He's too loyal to
Tide.
Lincoln. They'd win before. I think USC wins one before Alabama wins another one.
No way.
No. They don't play
Ooh.
defense.
You want to know why?
Nobody plays
You know why?
defense west of Nebraska.
Because Alabama will score all day on USC, and USC won't score all day on Alabama.
I'm going to give you something that's going to piss everybody off. It's going to be the brownie effect. It's going to drive all kinds of recruits to that school, regardless of what they play.
for 1 year.
Doesn't matter. I said USC wins one before Alabama wins one.
I think Alabama might win it this year because nobody's talking about them. Nobody's giving them a shot.
I like
That's
that.
when Nick Saban is the most dangerous. Nobody gives him a shot. I mean, hell, they went to the play. They had what's it called, Sims. They weren't when they had Sims. They weren't supposed to be good, and they still almost went to the national title game.
Is that Blake Sims?
Yep.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. That kid was.
Yeah, really, their only question mark is the quarterback position,
Right.
and they've got 3 highly recruited guys.
And Nick Saban ain't taking a slouch at that quarterback position either. You know what I mean?
All
He's
I'm
not
saying
taking a
is-
guy
And their
who's not
their
gonna be able
defense
to-
is very experienced
Well,
outside
as
of
long
a few
as-
positions.
Their defense is scary.
Dude, could you imagine? Wait a second. Could you imagine this? Okay, question. Do you think if Brett Venables fails at Oklahoma, just can't win? He went what 6-6 last year. Do you think if he has a few more seasons like that, with 8-4, 6-6, 7-5, that they let him go? Do you think to revive his career he goes to Alabama?
If anyone goes to
like
Bama,
everyone
it's going to
else
be
does.
it'll be
Everybody
Dabo.
else does.
Dabo will go to Bama and take Venables with him if he's having that bad of a time.
No, I'm saying
Everyone knows
Nick
Dabo's
Saban's
the
still
successor.
there. I'm saying Nick Saban's
You know where Will
still there,
Venables?
though.
Where'd Will Venables go to college?
Not a clue.
Oklahoma.
Brett.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Brett Venables.
Brett Venables.
Brett went
sorry.
to Brett
Yeah,
went.
yeah.
Yeah, they're not going to let him go, but I mean, it's not going to be easy. You'd have to really shift the
You
bed.
also have to understand that they have to rebuild everything. They literally
Oh,
had
yeah.
everything
Oh,
set
yeah.
up, and then they have to
Then
rebuild.
Lincoln
Plus,
Riley
on top of it,
took
they're
over.
going to the SEC where they're not going to be very good. So, I mean, it just
Well, it depends on
matter.
who they draw.
He was a scapegoat. I mean, realistically, he's
Right.
the next guy to take all the blame. Oh, we gave you everything and we jumped conferences and you couldn't win anything?
Who? Brett?
Yeah,
He's a fall guy, you think?
he's the fall guy. Poor guy.
Yep.
Just
I
like
could
Ryan
see it.
Day's going to be the fall guy.
Well, I could see that because that's just what
Your
happens.
fan base wants him gone.
Would you want Hartline, or is it Robisky? Whoever the receiver coach is.
Hartline.
Brian
Hartline.
Hartline.
Would you want him as head?
No, they're going to get.
He's never
Fickle.
done it.
They'll go take Fickle.
That's
I don't
Yeah,
even
but
think they
that's
do
who they
that.
would do.
Columbus
That's who
is
they would do.
obsessed with Hartline.
Well, we are, but it's because of who he brings in as a receiver coach. The one thing that I think, and I agree with Corey, if you're not going to stick it out with Ryan Day, I think there's only one other I think there's one coach you call, and that's Luke Fickell at this point, just because he's an Ohio State guy. He
You
played.
call him Marcus Freeman.
Call him too.
I wouldn't call Marcus Freeman. I would not call Marcus.
First of all, if I'm the AD for Ohio State, I'm going to tell the fans to suck my dick, basically.
Yeah, settle down.
Whoa.
Like
for
I'm
real.
I'm going to tell them to settle down because he's lost 6 games total
In 5-6 years now. What year? are
in
we
5 years. I mean, you're always in the
Took
conversation
over
for a top 5
2019.
team to start the year. You're ridiculously crazy. All because you can't beat Jim Harbaugh.
I mean, Harbaugh couldn't beat Urban.
The
and
other
he
thing,
kept his job.
and the other thing is you have to take into consideration that nobody in Ohio State waits for is Michigan hadn't won in Columbus in 20 years.
That's why it was a big
So
deal.
that's, I mean, I get that 100%. But everyone has his back because he says he's doing things different. So I don't think you can get rid of it. It's the same thing that you and I've had that conversation, Nick, many times. You can't. Who are you going to get that's better?
Well, that number two, and it's at the same token, we were always talking about Corey back when I mean, it was 8, 9 straight losses that you guys had, or it was like 9 straight or whatever. And during that time, it was like I remember you saying Michigan's fan base is saying get Harbaugh out, and I tell them all the time, who do we get that's better? You
At
know,
one point,
there was Les Miles.
you had Les Miles.
You
That
had
would have
Les
been the only
Miles.
guy I would have said that potentially would have been better, and that was just because of his previous success. But
Yes.
I don't know that anyone would have been better than Harbaugh.
Well, and that's the thing is, I mean, he's now tipping his toes back into the water. He's putting it all out there. Urban's kind of been out in the media saying he's interested in Texas eventually, maybe, possibly, doing his thing. It's like, well, if Urban's looking at getting back into coaching, if you're Ohio State, why don't you reach back out to him?
Too much.
Mm,
No, I think there's
bad
too much
publicity,
drama. Yeah,
bad PR.
Well, and that's the thing is
shot
the
yourself in the foot.
yeah, it was the entire way he left, and where he's leading everybody. Also, I don't know if anybody else has heard who's listening in to the show. 30 for 30 of the 2006 to 2009 Florida Gators is coming. We are going to see Urban Meyer, the preacher Tim Tebow, Aaron Hernandez,
Every single
Aaron
person.
All
Hernandez,
them dogs.
the cheater Cam Newton,
Give me
Percy
Rainey.
Harvin.
Chris Rainey.
You're gonna the Pouncey brothers. Oh my God! I remember. I know Drew and Ethan and I talked about this when like the 30 for 30s were starting to get like real big, and they were like, "Oh, have you seen that that documentary?" I remember the three of us were all like, "Just give me a Florida Gators one with Urban and Tim Tebow, like please."
Yeah,
I want.
I'm really looking forward to it. I think it might kill any idea of Urban head coaching again, because I think it's
Yeah,
going to be a
Have
bit
you?
of a hit piece on Urban,
it's
which
gonna be
I'm
a
here for.
burial.
He's
It'll be a
apparently
burial.
he's been in. I guess from
Yeah,
stuff I've heard, Urban is definitely not happy on how he has been presented throughout this documentary.
I mean, don't be a dick.
Don't be a
but,
dick. There it is.
but
Or don't go party with college kids.
I
Well,
mean,
I'm just kidding.
well,
Let's
I
settle
mean,
down about that.
well, did you guys hear what they were doing down in the SEC at like LSU
No.
or Auburn, or it was like LSU a couple of years ago? Their like coach was running trains with girls, like with his players on girls. Like their like wide receiver coach was just in there running a train with his players, just like having a good time.
Awesome.
yikes,
All right.
builds team chemistry.
And then like Auburn just got caught with something else like a couple weeks ago, and it was just like hindsight 2020. Urban
What I want to
Meyer's little
see,
thing doesn't seem so bad now, does it, Ohio State?
I want to see when SEC finally tanks for 3 or 4 years. I want to see them drop a 30 for 30 or a docu series about how the SEC was doing all this NIL stuff
Before.
before it was legal, under the table. Okay, all the big programs are doing it. That's cool, but the SEC pioneered that. I don't care what anyone's saying.
Absolutely.
I want to,
Absolutely.
or even USC. USC, you saw that they did the Reggie Bush stuff. Give me the Alabama one. Give me the Florida. Give me the LSU.
Well, we're gonna get the Florida one.
Oh, we
We're gonna
are.
get Florida. So, all
Kid's
right,
got that
guys.
bag.
I appreciate your time this morning. We've gone a while. We had a lot to get over this Sunday, so I appreciate your guys' time. Everybody have a great rest of your Sunday. Enjoy your week, and we'll catch you next weekend, guys. Peace out.